They call him Seatin, the man of legends.
Good day, audience, and welcome to the Paragon Guide for Warriors in Rift. Now, the spec that I like to use for Paragon is 61 Paragon, 8 Tempest, and 7 Champion. Arguably, this is one of the best DPS specs, but there's kind of like a massive argument that goes on the Warrior forums about sort of a Riftblade sub-variant being a bit better, but personally I prefer and like to stick with this spec. So if you want to use that spec, then go for it. There is really little to no difference in the DPS whatsoever. I prefer this spec, and I hope you do too, so that's the spec we're going to be going with today. So the spec itself, fairly straightforward: 61 Paragon, add 8 in Tempest, 5 out of 5 in Amped, and 3 out of 3 in Difficult Target. Then moving over to Champion, you have 5 out of 5 in Titan Strength and 2 out of 5 in Take No Prisoners. Now, for this spec, the buffs that you want to be using are Way of the River, which is in the Paragon tree, Way of the Wind, which is also in the Paragon tree, Turn of the Blade, in the Paragon tree as well, 3 in a row. What do you know? That rhymed, that was terrible. Enhanced Conductivity from the Tempest tree, Soldiers Bearing from the Champion tree, and Empower from the Tempest tree, and when you're by yourself, Focus of Body from Paragon. But when you're in a raid, that's going to get overridden by bards and various other classes that can buff you. So there are kind of 5 main buttons I use for the DPS rotation in this spec, and 4 out of 5 of those buttons are macros. So the first macro I have, which all these macros are going to be in the description of this video if you want to check them out. The first one is Show Open the Stream, and it casts Open the Stream, which is a damage over time ability, and it also casts Setting Moon. Setting Moon is an ability which increases the damage of your follow-up attacks. Now, the next macro is Show Rising Waterfall. You can basically set it to show whatever you want, guys. This is just personal preference. Cast Final Blessing, cast Rising Waterfall, cast Death Touch, cast Swift Strike. Then my number 4 is my Shifting Blades finisher macro, and that has cast Shifting Blades and cast Tranquility in. And then number 5 is my Alacrity macro. Now this alacrity, I really can't say that word. I believe it's alacrity, guys, so I'm going to go back, because I know a lot of you viewers are massive grammar Nazis, so it's alacrity, I think. So it's cast combat focused, cast alacrity, cast reaping harvest. Now I'm going to go on to sort of explain how all of these macros work in the DPS rotation. Now, to start off, guys, I just want to remind you that Paragon is not in any way, shape, or form an AoE or multiple target spec. It really does suck for that. It is pure single target DPS, and it is insane at that. It's so good. Like, the DPS that you can get out of this spec is amazing. Even for myself, who plays it, you know, I'm not quite up to the AHOV standard, but I play it fairly well. I can do insane numbers and just own absolutely everyone in sort of a variety of pug raids that I join. So I want to explain the rotation and how I handle it. So when I go into a fight, what I do is I initially will cast my number 1 macro. So this will cast Setting Moon and also Open the Stream. So I'll go ahead and do that right away, and then I'll go into my Shifting Blades macro, which will consume my attack points. Then I'll cast that once, which will do Tranquility, and then I'll hit my number 5 macro, and then I will just alternate sort of 2 and 3. Now this will give you absolutely insane DPS to start off with, because what Electricity does is it basically causes all your Rising Waterfalls and Reaping Harvest to hit double. So that is pretty awesome. So aside from that, it's kind of alternating macros 2 and 3, and whenever 4 is about to come off cooldown, because that has 15 seconds, and your dots and self buffs from Open the Stream and Setting the Moon pretty much last 15 seconds, and you want to refresh them every 15 seconds. So essentially what you do is you do 4 sets of number 2 twice, and then number 3, and then you go on to number 1 twice, and then number 4. So that is pretty damn straightforward. You want to make sure to double tap number 4, just so you make sure you get that tranquility off as soon as you've got shifting blades up, because that hits for an absolute truckload. And you can see, guys, even when I'm not really trying very hard here, I'm still doing a shit ton of DPS. If you have a look at the combat parser, I'm currently pumping out about 17k, and I'm really not focused on the rotation at all. I'm really focused on talking to you guys. So that is fairly, that's pretty much the basics of the Paragon single target rotation. Now, I encourage you to, pick up this spec as soon as possible and play around with it, because just in about sort of 5 to 10 minutes of getting this spec, you can be doing some real major DPS, and it's going to help you get into raids, get the top DPS spot, and, your guild leaders and friends will be like, oh, this guy's awesome, we'll give him all the loot. It definitely works like that. So, a few other things I just want to quickly point out and talk about Paragon. You have a couple of very nice utility abilities. You have this ability called Grasping the Horizon, which basically increases the range of all your melee attacks by 20 meters. So basically, you can do your entire rotation from ranged half of the time, which is really damn awesome, and comes useful in fights like Golok or maybe Matriarch of Pestilence, where you need to run out. You also have an interrupt on an 8-second cooldown, which is completely off global cooldown. You have a disarm called Wrist Strike. You have a 4-second stun called Predictable Movements. You have a movement speed increase called Fleet of Foot. And finally, the last kind of awesome thing that you have is something called Way of the Mountain, which means that you cannot be knocked back at all. So this comes very useful in fights like, for example, Volan on the platforms, and a variety of other fights and scenarios where you get knocked back a lot. So that might be something to keep in mind, but bear in mind you can only have a total of 2 ways up at any one time. And also, sorry, one more thing that I want to mention is you also have this buff called Way of the Suns, which causes your follow-up attacks to heal the Paragon for 20% of your attack power. So this means you can actually, using this spec and build, solo Chronicles quite easily, because literally every other attack is pretty much a follow-up attack, so you're constantly pumping out those follow-up attacks which are healing you. Obviously this isn't the best solo spec, but it works fairly well and you kill stuff pretty damn fast. So that is it for the Paragon guide, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a thing or two about Paragon. Any questions, leave them in the comments below and I will be sure to do my best to answer them. Take care, guys, and have a good day.